had several funerals before COVID, and they were of the traditional sort. There was a viewing at the um, there was a viewing at the nursing home, the funeral home. There was a church service followed by either a burial or an interment of ashes, and then a luncheon back at the church um, for where the family can meet and talk and share stories, and that kind of thing. So that was most of our funerals were like that. Occasionally, you would have a funeral that was done completely at the funeral home, but it's still similar. You have the service at the funeral home, you would go and inter the ashes, you would come back to the funeral home and have a luncheon there. What I noticed is I've had maybe half a dozen, maybe up to 10. I'd have to sit down and actually think of how many I've done. But I've had quite a few funerals during under various levels of COVID restriction. And I've noticed that the church service funeral is pretty much gone. Of those, I only did one church service funeral um, during this whole COVID time, and most of the other ones were different. No, I've only had one luncheon, and that was recently, and it wasn't at the church. So you can see that the pandemic has moved, at least for our community, has moved people away from the traditional style of that we're used to having of that church service, graveside service, luncheon, the three of with a viewing. There's always usually a viewing in there somewhere too. With the viewing, there's sometimes two viewings. Definitely, I think it's the restrictions on gathering. I know people who wanted to have a funeral church service. They had a church service in their plans, and they've opted for because we were in COVID, they opted for something else. So what I've noticed the most of is graveside services only, where I'm expected to just do the graveside service, the committal. In our denomination, the committal service, we're more liturgical, so our committal service will look very similar to the committal services of the Anglican Church, the Book of Common Prayer, very similar in style, and that's what people kind of want under these COVID circumstances. Almost all of them have been immediate family or larger gatherings at the graveside. A short that I think that really does affect how people grieve, because the sermon, the message, the Bible readings, the hymns, all of that is truncated from and the funeral service is intended to convey a message of hope, as Christians say in the creed, the resurrection of the body and the life everlasting. That's the message that the funeral service is supposed to get across, and that's a lot harder to do if you've got 15-20 minutes of service time and a 5-minute sermonette, because you can't preach for 15 minutes outside. It's not practical, and unless somebody brings a guitar or something, you can't have music, and you can't expect family members who are maybe not churched or not religious to be able to sing the hymns, or sing Amazing Grace, or these kinds of hymns that people want. So it really does affect grieving, because I think there's less opportunity for people to hear the promises of the gospel, that God promises resurrection and eternal life to those who trust in Jesus. It's harder to convey that death is not the enemy, and these kinds of things, if you've shortened this time frame. And then that also affects our ability to minister to the families, because traditionally you've seen the family at the viewings, you've seen them at the funeral service, you've talked to them at luncheon, you've been with, so you've had more time with them, and now under COVID it's a phone call, maybe a meeting with the family, or a phone call, or a voice call, or internet call with the family, and a service that won't barely last an hour if you stretch it. So most of the services now are graveside service. There's been one or two where it's been in the funeral home and then graveside service. But viewings I have not had a viewing in 2 years. I'm not seeing them. And luncheons are very rare. Those, what do you call it, wakes, or those kinds of things.
Has there been anything that you've done or the church has done to fill that gap that's been left by COVID and the necessary safety restrictions?
We've had our church has put money in with digital cameras in our sanctuary, where they weren't equipped with that before. Now we have them, and so we've continued to offer a church service to families who want it, and families who are, and on our sanctuary can hold up to 21 households, 21 families, while social distancing. So that's a good chunk of people. That's up to about 45, 50 people, maybe a few more if you push it. We've been offering to families the ability to record the service, to live stream it, and to have it available on Zoom. And so that means it can be on Facebook on our page. It can be not live streamed. It can be just recorded, and a digital copy of either the video or the audio be made available to the family for them to distribute. And with Zoom, it means family members who are maybe homebound and not able to come out, or on the other side of the country or whatever, can actually pick up the phone and listen in on the telephone to the service. So that we've been offering that as an option to families, to have something tangible to use. Oddly enough, that's been very useful for baptisms, but nobody's taken us up on that yet for funerals. No. There's something about being there with the family and being with the deceased, and commending them into God's hands. I think that's important. And also I think being there with the body and everything, it does bring a sense of closure that's, I think, needed.